At 5:17 local time, the Arabian Sea lies flat and dark blue, looking almost too calm. On the bridge of a United States naval vessel moving east through international waters, no one speaks until the surface watch leans closer to the repeater and locks onto the screen. 3 new contacts have appeared in the operations center. 3 pale returns sharpen on the radar almost at the same moment. They are not fishing boats. They are not merchant traffic. They are not random interference. Their movements are clean, intentional, and closing in. One contact increases speed first, then the second follows. The third stays farther back, just enough to make the formation feel even more deliberate. Surface contacts increasing speed. The officer of the deck does not make a dramatic turn. He simply lifts the sound-powered handset and speaks in the same steady tone the crew has heard countless times in training and only a handful of times for real. Condition 3, set all key stations. That is all it takes. Across the vessel, steel doors swing open, boots move through ladder wells, consoles come alive, and casual conversations vanish. There is no loud chaos, no confusion, only a crew shifting into readiness by instinct. On the bridge, the captain steps beside the chart table and watches the plot update in real time. In the operations center, the data begins filling in line by line. Bearing, range, speed, closest point of approach. One of the contacts adjusts course 5 degrees to starboard. Then 10. Now it is no longer simply moving through the same stretch of water. It is shaping its path toward the American vessel. Closest point of approach is decreasing. Seconds later, the second contact follows, sliding wider and building an angle on the opposite side. The third remains farther back, steady and measured, almost detached. That is the detail that makes the situation sharper. 3 vessels do not accidentally move into that kind of geometry. One applies pressure, one moves to the side, one watches from behind. The tactical officer studies the display and says what everyone in the room already understands. This is coordinated. Through the bridge windows, there is still almost nothing to see, only dawn haze and a faint strip of light along the horizon. But the sensors are already telling the story. Hull size, heat signatures, radar behavior, emission patterns. The ship's systems pull the fragments together faster than any person could. Possible Iranian frigates. No one reacts outwardly. The captain keeps his hands behind his back. Possible is not enough. Confirm. Long-range optics are brought fully online. Electro-optical cameras stabilize against the gentle roll of the sea. Feeds from the operations center flicker across the displays. A sharp gray shape appears first through the shimmer and glare, then another, then a third. Angular superstructures, naval hull lines, military masts. There is no ambiguity now. Contacts confirmed. 3 Iranian naval vessels. On the bridge, the captain gives a small, controlled nod. Bridge-to-bridge hails go out immediately on international frequencies. Iranian naval vessels, this is a United States vessel operating lawfully in international waters. State your intentions. Nothing comes back. The radio offers only static. The officer of the deck sends the message again, using the same words, the same calm tone, with no sharpness and no emotion. It is the kind of calm that only works when every camera, every defensive station, and every sailor behind it is already exactly where they need to be. Still no answer. Out on the water, the lead frigate keeps closing. By 5:19, the range is dropping fast enough that the numbers on the tactical display begin to matter by the second, not by the minute. One Iranian vessel is moving toward the American ship's bow from the starboard side. The second is stretching wide to port, searching for angle and leverage. The third trails behind the pair like an observer no one invited, or a commander keeping distance while directing the rhythm. Lead contact increasing speed. How much? 24 knots. That gets everyone's attention, not because it is dramatic, but because it is deliberate. A naval vessel does not add speed during a close intercept unless it wants the other bridge to notice. The American captain does not order a sudden turn. He does not hurry to the bridge wing. He does not raise his voice. Maintain course, maintain discipline. That single line steadies the bridge more than any speech could. This is the American answer to pressure at sea. No flinch, no performance, no easy escalation. Inside the operations center, the electronic warfare team begins recording every signal coming from the Iranian ships. Search radar sweeps, surface navigation pulses, narrowband returns. Nothing yet suggests a precision tracking lock, but there is enough to show that the frigates are not simply watching. They are measuring. The United States vessel shifts from routine transit into a full document and deter posture. Cameras record continuously. Timestamps are synchronized across systems. Course changes are logged. Radio calls are archived. Even the forward deck mount turns a few careful degrees. Not enough to provoke, just enough to be noticed. A message without a single word. At 5:20, the lookout spots the first hull with the naked eye. Contact bearing 085, visual. Now the horizon is no longer empty. A gray frigate emerges through the haze, low and sharp against the morning light, its bow throwing white water as it drives across the sea. Moments later, another shape appears farther out, wider to port. The third follows behind them, darker and smaller in the distance, but closing all the same. The Arabian Sea suddenly feels much smaller than open water should. On the American bridge, nobody moves more than necessary. The helmsman keeps the course steady. A boatswain's mate watches the bearing shift. The captain studies the lead frigate in silence. The geometry is changing quickly now, and not in the American ship's favor. 3 Iranian frigates, 1 United States naval vessel, open water, no answer on the radio, and ahead, a closing line of steel and wake. The challenge is no longer just a signal, it is becoming a shape. At 5:21 local time, the entire encounter changes. On the tactical display inside the operations center, the 3 Iranian frigates are no longer only closing. They are arranging themselves. The lead ship pushes harder across the projected track of the American vessel, its bow angled just enough to suggest it may cross in front. The second frigate widens to port, creating the kind of offset that forces the bridge team to watch 2 bearings at the same time. The third remains deeper astern, steady and deliberate, holding the outside position like a ship assigned to observe, record, and control the spacing of the others. The tactical officer studies the screen for less than a second. They're building a box. No one in the room answers. They do not need to. The display says it clearly enough. 1 ship forward, 1 ship wide, 1 ship behind. It is not a ceremonial shadow. It is pressure through formation, designed to narrow the American ship's choices without a single direct confrontation. On the bridge, the morning haze is beginning to thin. Through binoculars, the lead Iranian frigate is now clear, a sharp gray wedge cutting across the water, spray tearing away from its bow. The second has moved far enough to the left that the bridge team has to keep splitting its attention across the horizon. The third is still farther back, but its presence weighs on every decision. Closest point of approach, 2.1 nautical miles and decreasing. That number lands heavily. In open ocean, 2 miles can sound like plenty of space. But in a controlled naval intercept with 3 foreign military vessels closing from separate angles, it suddenly feels small, very small. The officer of the deck reaches for the radio handset again. Iranian naval vessels. This is a United States vessel operating lawfully in international waters. Your maneuvering is unsafe. Alter course immediately. The message goes out clearly across bridge-to-bridge frequencies. For one moment, there is only static. Then, finally, a voice answers. Flat, accented, and carefully controlled. United States vessel, you are approaching a monitored area. Change heading. No explanation, no evidence, no real warning, just pressure dressed up as authority. On the American bridge, the captain does not even turn toward the radio operator. Reply. The response goes back at once. Iranian naval vessels. This is a lawful transit in international waters. Your approach is unsafe. Alter course now. After that, nothing. No clarification, no acknowledgement, no change in tone. Ahead, the lead frigate simply keeps coming. By 5:22, its speed increases again. Lead contact now 26 knots. A few eyes lift inside the operations center. Not many, just enough. 26 knots is not casual in a maneuver like this. It means engines committed, helm steady, and the bridge team fully aligned. The Iranians are no longer checking whether the American ship sees them. They know it does. Now they are testing whether it will move. The captain's answer is the same as before. Hold course. It is a simple order. It is also the hardest order on the ship. The helmsman keeps the rudder exactly where it belongs. The quartermaster watches the repeater. No one on the bridge is thinking in speeches or politics. They are thinking in bearings, closing speed, distance, and what happens if metal keeps moving toward metal. Inside the operations center, the electronic warfare team leans over its consoles. We're getting a tighter sweep. The electronic warfare officer studies the trace and answers without emotion. Low-power surface search, directed. They're painting us. Not a precision lock. Not yet. But it is no longer passive either. The Iranian frigates are measuring range, course, and speed, building their own live picture of the American vessel moment by moment. And that matters. On the bridge wing, a lookout presses binoculars hard against his face. Visible topside movement on lead frigate. A second later, the long-range camera confirms it. Small figures are moving near the forward deck mount. Helmets, dark silhouettes. No crew is fully set in place, but there is no attempt to look relaxed either. On the second frigate, more activity appears on deck. Sailors step into view, then pause near the rail as if waiting for the next instruction. The American captain stays silent for several seconds. Then he says quietly, "Prepare flight operations." The order moves through the ship faster than any raised voice could. A Seahawk helicopter does not change the entire balance by itself. That is not why it matters here. What it changes is perspective. It adds height, evidence, and presence. Once it is in the air, it can see the entire formation at once. Every deck movement, every course change, every unsafe angle from above. More than that, it sends a clear signal to the other side. The American ship is no longer only receiving the picture, it is beginning to shape it. Down on the flight deck, the crew is already moving. Tie-downs are released. The sensor pod is checked again. Defensive countermeasures are prepared. The rotors are still folded, but not for much longer. At 5:24, the situation tightens again. Lead contact CPA now 1.6. Port contact maintaining flank angle. Trailing contact holding outside arc. The bridge no longer needs the tactical screen to understand what is happening. The ocean itself shows the pattern now. One Iranian frigate ahead, cutting harder. One winding off the port side. One staying back just far enough to preserve the pressure. Every option now carries weight. If the American vessel turns too early, it gives up the lane. If it adds speed too aggressively, it shrinks the crossing window. If it reacts too sharply, it gives the Iranians exactly the scene they may be trying to create. The captain looks through the glass at the lead frigate and gives the order that matters most. No sudden maneuver, we do this clean. No one repeats it, no one has to. By 5:25, the helicopter crew is strapped in. The engines begin to spool. On the horizon, the three Iranian frigates continue closing in a formation that now feels less like a challenge and more like clear intent. Outside, the sea is still calm. Inside the American ship, nothing feels calm anymore. Because if the surface picture keeps narrowing, then in the next minute, the United States vessel will do what disciplined navies do when space begins to disappear. It will take control of the picture from above. At 5:26 local time, the flight deck comes alive. On the stern of the American vessel, deck crews move low and fast beneath the force of the rising rotors. Tie-down chains come free. A final hand signal cuts through the noise. The Seahawk's blades blur into a solid gray disc. Then the helicopter lifts cleanly from the deck, nose dipping toward the tightening space between steel hulls and open water. No cheers, no theater. Just a naval aircraft doing exactly what it was built to do. From the bridge, the launch is visible for only a moment before the helicopter drops low over the sea and fades into the glare. Inside the operations center, however, it never disappears. Its feed arrives almost instantly. Electro-optical video, infrared imagery, range data, stabilized angles no lookout could hold with binoculars alone. The tactical picture widens, and with it, the truth becomes clearer. One Iranian frigate remains out front, still cutting toward the projected path of the American ship. The second is holding wide to port, keeping the flank angle alive. The third trails farther back, neither passive nor hurried, maintaining a distant position that suggests control, observation, or coordination. From above, the formation looks even more concerning than it did from the ship. They're still pressing, the air controller says. The Seahawk moves just above the waterline, using speed and altitude to compress the distance. At that altitude, the Arabian Sea looks like a sheet of dark glass, broken only by wake lines and the white edges of converging bows. The helicopter banks slightly left, then steadies out, cutting into the space between the lead Iranian frigate and the pressure line forming off the American vessel's port side. Inside the aircraft, two pilots and a sensor operator work in short, practiced rhythm. One flies, one scans, one builds the record. The sensor turret beneath the nose rotates smoothly and locks on. Thermal contrast sharpens across the screens. Bridge windows, exhaust trails, movement on deck. Now the crew aboard the American ship can see the details that matter. On the lead Iranian frigate, several sailors are visible near the forward deck mount. They are not rushing. They are not waving. They are not trying to look casual. They are moving with purpose. On the second frigate, two figures step out near the bridge wing and remain there, fixed in place, watching the helicopter approach. The third ship, farther back, shows less visible activity on deck, but its sensors are active. The electronic warfare team inside the operations center confirms it almost immediately. We've got additional emissions from the trailing contact. The electronic warfare officer studies the return. Search and track behavior, still not precision targeting, still not. That last phrase hangs in the compartment with quiet weight. The Seahawk moves into a tactical presence position, close enough to be impossible to ignore, but far enough to avoid becoming the spark. It does not make a sharp pass. It does not dive toward the bridge. It does not turn the moment into a spectacle. Instead, it flies the kind of controlled, deliberate profile used when one message needs to be understood clearly. We see everything. The pilot holds steady. The radio operator transmits on an open frequency. Iranian naval vessels, this is a United States Navy helicopter. You are conducting unsafe maneuvering in international waters. Alter course immediately. The message goes out once in English. Then again in the same measured, practiced cadence. No reply. Below, the lead frigate keeps driving ahead, its bow wake spreading wide and hard across the surface. But on the second frigate, something changes. Its wake shortens slightly. The ship is still moving quickly. It is still holding pressure, but it is no longer building its angle with the same confidence as before. Port contact speed reduction, the operations center reports. How much? Down 2 knots. It is not a major shift, but it is the first change in the Iranian pattern since the encounter began. The Seahawk circles wider now, making its presence visible to every topside sailor on every Iranian deck. Its green anti-collision light flashes through the morning haze. Through the open cabin door, crew silhouettes are visible inside. The sensor turret remains locked, quiet and relentless, recording every face, every posture, every heading adjustment. This is not theater. This is control of the picture, made visible. On the American bridge, the captain watches the live feed in silence. He sees the lead frigate still pressing forward. He sees the second beginning to hesitate. He sees the third still lingering astern, almost certainly sending and receiving information of its own. The sea is not safer than it was 2 minutes earlier. But for the first time, the Iranian formation no longer appears perfectly synchronized. And that matters. At 5:28, the Seahawk drops slightly lower on a shallow arc off the lead frigate's starboard bow. Not reckless, not random, just close enough to make every watchstander on that ship look up and rethink the geometry. Through the stabilized camera, the American crew sees more movement near the Iranian bridge. Binoculars come up, arms gesture. A man near the bridge wing turns sharply, then disappears back inside. Then the lead Iranian frigate makes the smallest course adjustment of the morning. 2 degrees, maybe 3. Not enough to end the challenge, but enough to show they are feeling the pressure. The second frigate drops another knot. Its bow angle softens. The third still holds back, still steady, but now the outside ship looks less like a silent controller and more like a vessel recalculating from a distance. The air controller's voice stays even. They're reassessing, but the most dangerous ship is still the lead. Its hull is larger now on every screen. Close enough for sea spray to flash bright under the bow. Close enough that the American bridge no longer needs magnified optics to follow it. It is still the point of pressure. Still, the vessel most likely to turn a challenge into a serious incident. Inside the operations center, the reports continue. Lead contact maintaining aggressive line. Port contact reduced to 22 knots. Trailing contact holding position. The Seahawk banks again, keeping all 3 ships in rotation, never losing the full picture. Above the water, the helicopter has changed the equation without making a single hostile move. The Iranian frigates are no longer facing only one American ship on a flat horizon. They are now being watched from 2 domains. Every turn is visible from above. Every hesitation is recorded. Every unsafe move becomes harder to deny later. For a few seconds, that alone seems to slow the formation. Then, at 5:29, the lead frigate pushes forward again. Its bow cuts harder. Its angle sharpens. On the American screens, the closest point of danger drops once more. The helicopter may have widened the picture, but now the picture shows something more serious than before. The first Iranian frigate is no longer simply testing, it is committing. At 5:31 local time, the margin for error almost disappears. On the bridge of the American warship, the lead Iranian frigate is no longer just a contact on a screen. It is a visible hull, gray steel, white bowspray. A moving wall crossing into the kind of range where poor judgment stops being a signal and becomes something physical. Inside the operations center, the tactical display tightens with every refresh. Lead contact CPA now under 1 nautical mile. No one repeats it. No one needs to. The second Iranian frigate remains off the port side. It is no longer pressing as hard as before, but it is still close enough to complicate any sudden American maneuver. The third remains farther back, outside the immediate danger zone, holding its position like a ship assigned to witness the outcome and support whatever follows. The geometry is unforgiving. Ahead, one frigate is cutting harder across the American ship's bow. To port, another holds enough angle to limit easy room. Astern and outside, the third preserves the pressure. It is not a trap in the dramatic sense. It is worse than a dramatic standoff. It is a calculated professional move designed to squeeze the American ship into a narrow decision and see whether its crew loses discipline first. On the bridge, no one raises their voice. The captain stands centered between the forward windows, eyes fixed on the lead Iranian frigate. His officers are not looking to him for comfort. They are watching the sea, the bearings, and the numbers. This is no longer about broad strategy. It is about helm, speed, timing, and whether 2 ships are about to run out of safe water. Then the report from the operations center comes through again. Electronic warfare shows mode change on lead contact. That lands even harder than the last closest point report. The electronic warfare officer clarifies at once. Not confirmed precision targeting, but tighter and more focused. Not enough to justify a stronger response. Enough to remove every illusion. The Iranian frigate is not wandering. It is not drifting through the area by chance. It is pressing the line with narrowed sensors and a committed bow. On the Seahawk's live feed, the American crew can now see the lead ship's bridge windows clearly. Dark rectangles, movement behind the glass, figures near the forward deck area. One crewman turns toward the front mount. Another steps back toward the superstructure. At 5:32, the officer of the deck speaks quietly. Recommends small course correction. The captain does not answer right away. He watches the lead frigate for another heartbeat, then another. The Iranian bow keeps cutting across. Its wake is hard and clean. The angle says what the radar has been saying for minutes. They are trying to make the American ship show the first visible concession. Turn too much and the lane is surrendered. Turn too late and the margin gets dangerously thin. React too sharply and the other side gets exactly the image it came for. The captain makes his decision. Come right 3 degrees, smoothly. No one on the bridge mistakes that for backing down. It is not. It is a denial move. Minimal, precise. Just enough to open the safety picture without giving up the transit. The helmsman repeats the order, hands steady, and eases the rudder over with the kind of restraint that takes more nerve than any hard turn ever could. The bridge remains silent as the bow begins its subtle shift. At the same moment, the Seahawk moves above and to starboard of the lead frigate. The helicopter drops slightly lower and tightens its orbit. Not close enough to provoke, not distant enough to ignore. Its sensor turret stays locked. Its presence is impossible to miss. Every sailor on the Iranian decks can see it. Every officer on those bridges knows the entire encounter is now being recorded from angles they cannot control. The radio crackles again. Iranian naval vessel, you are creating unsafe crossing risk. Alter course immediately. No answer. The American ship continues its tiny correction, opening a small pocket of safety in a situation now measured by yards. On the tactical display, the numbers paused for the first time. The closest point is still too close, but it is no longer dropping as fast. Then something changes on the live video feed. The lead frigate's bow angle softens, not dramatically, just enough. Inside the operations center, one watchstander leans forward. Lead contact reducing crossing angle. How much? 3 degrees, maybe 4. That is the first break. Not a retreat, not a public step back, but a break in the pressure line they had held since the encounter began. Almost immediately, the second frigate to port reduces speed again. Its wake shortens visibly. Its position still matters, but its role is changing now. Less enforcer, more observer. The third ship remains outside the immediate danger zone, but even it begins to drift into a less dominant support angle. The box is weakening. At 5:33, the officer of the deck reports what everyone can now see. Range opening slightly. Not much, but enough. The lead Iranian frigate is still close, still dangerous. Still trying to preserve the appearance of control. But the sharpest moment has passed. The American ship did not swing wide. It did not panic. It did not rush into a louder response. It adjusted exactly enough to prevent the situation from closing further, then forced the other bridge to make the next meaningful choice. And that bridge made it. The lead frigate comes off a little more, then a little more. The Seahawk tracks the movement from above. The operations center logs the heading change. Electronic warfare logs the emissions. The cameras record every second. The entire encounter turns on that shift. The Iranian ships came in trying to compress the lane and make the American vessel visibly give way. Instead, under pressure, under observation, and inside a narrowing corridor of consequences, they are the first to ease off the line. That is the pivot. No launch, no exchange, no impact. But the outcome is becoming clear. By 5:34, the closest point of danger is no longer moving inward. It is sliding back the other way. The captain does not celebrate. He does not comment. He simply watches as the lead frigate opens its bow by 1 more degree, then another, until the shape of the sea finally changes from confrontation to separation. The second frigate lingers to port, but it no longer controls the picture. The third ship keeps its distance. The challenge is still present, but its sharpest edge has faded. On the bridge, the American vessel holds steady through the final seconds of the encounter. Because in a situation like this, the first side to lose control rarely comes out ahead. And in the Arabian Sea that morning, the United States warship never lost it. At 5:38 local time, the sea begins to feel wider again. Not because the situation is completely over, but because the geometry has changed. On the tactical display inside the operations center, the lead Iranian frigate is no longer cutting hard across the American ship's bow. Its heading has opened enough to turn what had been a narrowing crossing picture into more of a parallel shadow. The second frigate, still out to port, has slowed further and fallen back just enough to lose its leverage. The third remains outside the immediate action, trailing the formation from a safer distance, steady but no longer controlling the picture. For the first time in nearly 20 minutes, the American bridge is no longer measuring the encounter in shrinking margins. It is measuring it in separation. Range opening. The report comes from the operations center in the same calm tone as everything before it. No one on the bridge answers with visible relief. Relief is not the routine out here. Procedure is... The captain keeps his eyes forward, then turns slightly toward the officer of the deck. Maintain course. Maintain speed. That matters. No chase. No dramatic turn to prove a point. No attempt to crowd the withdrawing ships and turn pressure back on them. The American vessel does what disciplined navies do after the hardest part of a close encounter has passed. It keeps moving exactly as a lawful ship in international waters should. Steady, predictable, professional. Above the stern, the Seahawk completes one final observation orbit. Its camera stays fixed on the Iranian formation as it spreads out. Bow angles, wake patterns, bridge activity. Every second goes into the record. Every heading change is time-stamped. Every radar sweep is logged. What just happened on the surface of the Arabian Sea is no longer only an encounter. It is now a documented event. Inside the operations center, the electronic warfare team continues building the file. Signal logs from all 3 frigates, mode changes, sweep intervals, and timing links between course adjustments and sensor behavior. On another console, the electro-optical footage is already being matched against the ship's navigation data. A legal and tactical record is forming in real time. This is the part most people never see. The close pass is dramatic. The restraint is visible. But the real advantage comes afterward, when a naval crew turns a tense moment into a complete picture of who moved first, who pressed harder, who changed course, and who finally eased away. At 5:40, the Seahawk is cleared to return. The helicopter swings wide, climbs, and turns back toward the ship. Through the bridge glass, crew members can see it coming in over the wake, stable and controlled, its rotors flashing in the early morning light. The flight deck is ready. Tie-down crews crouch in position. The aircraft settles onto the deck with a brief sound from the landing gear and a burst of rotor wash. Mission complete. No live engagement, no warning bursts, no smoke on the horizon. But that does not mean nothing happened. On the bridge, watchstanders return to a more normal scan, though no one fully relaxes. Not yet. One eye stays on the Iranian ships, another stays on the radar. The sea can change its mood quickly, and everyone aboard knows it. Still, the rhythm is different now. The hard edge of the encounter has passed. The lead Iranian frigate continues drifting outward, no longer crossing the American ship's path, no longer adding speed. The second remains visible off the port quarter, but now it looks more like an escort than a challenger. The third keeps its distance, a gray shape against the widening horizon. The 3 ships that had arrived with coordinated pressure are now leaving in a stretched formation. Their challenge was never resolved over the radio, but it was answered in movement. They came looking for control. They did not get it. Inside the operations center, the tactical officer leans over the plot and studies the final spacing. Then he says it plainly, almost as if dictating a line for the log. They broke formation first. That is the whole story in 6 words. Not because the American ship chased them, not because the morning sky filled with fire, but because when the sea narrowed, when the margin for error nearly vanished, and when the moment came down to discipline against pressure, the United States warship held its lane and held its nerve. That is how encounters like this are won. Not with speeches, not with noise, but with control of bearing, control of sensors, and control of emotion. By 5:43, readiness levels begin to ease in careful steps. Not dropped, eased. The helm remains steady. The operations center stays fully manned. Defensive stations remain set. The logs continue. The captain gives no speech to the bridge team. He does not need to. The crew already understands what happened. They felt it in every report, every unanswered call, every tiny change in heading that separated a lawful transit from a serious international incident. Somewhere behind the bridge, printers begin producing time-coded records. In another compartment, video files are copied and secured. The memory of the encounter is already being turned into a permanent archive. On a warship, memory is not just emotional. It is digital, procedural, admissible, and it matters. Because in places like the Arabian Sea, perception carries power. One bridge may say one thing, another may claim something else, but the ship with the better records, clearer footage, and calmer crew usually owns the truth afterward. At 5:45, the Iranian frigates are still visible on radar, but no longer inside the American ship's immediate tactical space. The sea has widened again. The sky is brighter. The pressure has drained out of the formation. The United States warship keeps moving east. That is the final image. Not a chase, not a celebration, just a clean transit continuing through open water as if the challenge had never been strong enough to change it. 3 Iranian frigates came in fast, coordinated, and deliberate. They tried to compress the lane, crowd the bow, and force a visible concession from an American warship operating in international waters. Instead, they met a crew that stayed cold, a bridge that stayed disciplined, and a command team that understood the most important rule of a maritime standoff. The first side to lose control usually loses the encounter. That morning in the Arabian Sea, it was not the United States Navy. So here is the question. If you had been standing on that bridge, would you have held course as long as they did, or would you have turned earlier to open the distance? And one more. Was restraint the smartest tool on the water that morning, or should the American ship have responded more firmly the moment those 3 frigates started building the box? Drop your take in the comments, because sometimes the most important victory at sea is the one that leaves no wreckage behind. And this time, that victory belonged to the ship that refused to blink.